Your aunt puts her fork down. She looks right at you and asks the one question you've spent the entire year trying to avoid. For exactly 3 seconds, your brain goes completely blank. Maybe it's not your aunt. Maybe it's a coworker at the coffee machine, or a stranger at a party, or your mother-in-law across the dinner table. Doesn't matter who. The question lands, and something in you just shuts off. Your face gets hot, your mouth opens, and nothing comes out. And in your head, one word is screaming on repeat. Why can't I just answer a simple question? Here's the part nobody tells you. That blank moment isn't weakness. It's not a personality flaw. It's your brain doing exactly what it's built to do. And once you know why, you can override it in real time, in front of anyone, without ever looking rattled again. Researchers Naomi Eisenberger, Matthew Lieberman, and Kipling Williams put people in a brain scanner and had them play a simple ball-tossing game, then quietly excluded them from it. The brain regions that lit up when people felt left out were the same regions that light up during physical pain. Social rejection and a broken bone register in almost the same place. So when someone asks you something that exposes you in front of a group, your body isn't overreacting. It's treating the moment the same way it would treat a physical threat. That's why you freeze instead of thinking clearly. You're not stupid in that moment, you're just flooded. And once you understand that, the whole problem changes shape. This isn't about finding the perfect, clever comeback. It's about having a system that works no matter how the question is thrown at you, whether it comes from someone who means well or someone who doesn't. By the end of this, you'll have that system, every piece of it. Stick around, because the last piece is the one that changes everything else you just learned. Let's start with the fastest fix there is, and it has nothing to do with what they asked. It's about who's asking. Picture 2 people asking you the exact same invasive question. So, when are you finally having a baby? One of them is a woman you met 20 minutes ago at a wedding who you'll never see again in your life. The other is your sister, who you talk to every week. Same words, completely different weight. And most people give both of them the same reaction, a spike of panic, because they respond to the sentence instead of the source. Here's the fix. Before you even think about your answer, silently ask yourself one question. Does this person's opinion actually shape my life? If the answer is no, if it's a stranger, a distant acquaintance, someone whose judgment evaporates the second they walk away, you are allowed to treat their question as background noise. Smile, give a light non-answer, and move on. You're not required to hand over your real feelings to someone who has no stake in them. That single mental filter kills half of the panic before it even starts, because you stop preparing a defense for someone who was never a threat. But when it's someone who matters, someone you'll sit across from again next week, the filter flips. Now the question deserves a real response, and that's where most people get stuck, because they think their only 2 options are cave completely or snap back defensively. There's a third option, and it's better than both. Not every uncomfortable question is trying to hurt you. Some genuinely just want information. Someone asks why you added something unusual to a recipe, or how you landed on a number in a report. They're curious, not attacking. Answer it, plainly, and the tension dissolves on its own. That's the easy category. It's the next one that trips people up, because it feels almost identical, but it isn't. This is the question that technically isn't your business, asked by someone who doesn't even realize they've crossed a line. You look tired. Is everything okay? Wow, you've changed since last year. Any progress on finding someone? Nobody planned an ambush. They just wandered straight onto private property without noticing the fence. And your instinct, the second you feel that sting, is to defend the border. To go stiff, cold, maybe even a little sharp. Which works for about 4 seconds, and then makes the whole room, including you, more uncomfortable than the question ever did. There's a much sharper way to handle it, and it comes down to 2 words you swap out for 2 other words. Most people, when they feel cornered, reach for yes, but. Yes, I don't have much experience, but I'm working on it. Yes, I've gained some weight, but I've been busy. It sounds like a defense. It is a defense, and defenses invite more questions because the other person hears but, and their brain automatically starts looking for the crack in your argument. Swap it for yes and. Same honesty, opposite effect. Someone tells you, half joking, half serious, "You're new here. What makes you think you can handle this?" Instead of stiffening up, you say, "Yeah, you're right. I don't have the experience yet, and that's exactly why I've been sitting in on every session I can, pulling data from the last 3 quarters and running it past the team lead before I open my mouth." Notice what happened. You didn't deny the accusation, you agreed with it, and then you kept talking, on your terms, about what you're doing about it. The other person has nothing left to push against because you already own the thing they were trying to expose. This idea that the questions which sting the most are rarely about facts, they're about identity, is the whole premise behind Douglas Stone, Bruce Patton, and Sheila Heen's book, Difficult Conversations, which grew out of the Harvard Negotiation Project. Their argument is that underneath almost every loaded question is a quieter question about who you are. Am I good enough? Am I behind? Am I doing this right? Once you see that, yes and makes sense. You're not just answering the surface question, you're calmly reassuring the identity question underneath it, out loud, before anyone has to say it directly. Try it the next time someone corners you. Yes and, not yes but. Say it slowly in your head a few times so it's loaded and ready before you need it. Because in the moment, your default will always try to reach for but first. Now, here's where it gets more complicated, and where all of this so far stops being enough. Everything we just covered assumes good faith. A curious stranger, an oblivious coworker, a nosy relative who genuinely just wandered onto your lawn without noticing the fence. Their questions sting, but they're not trying to take you down. You reframe, you breathe, you move on. But some people ask questions the exact same way a boxer throws a jab. Not to learn anything, not because they're curious, because they want to watch you flinch in front of everyone else in the room. They already know the answer won't matter. The reaction is the whole point. And that's a completely different fight, with completely different rules. Because everything that works on an innocent question will actually make things worse against someone who's aiming for you on purpose. That's next. He's not asking because he wants to know the answer. He's asking because he wants to watch your face when you don't have one. And the second you take the bait, he wins, whether you say a single word or not. Picture this. Someone stands up in a meeting, or a comment section, or a family argument, and asks something like, "You claim to care about the team, so why didn't you mention this problem 3 months ago?" Notice the trick buried inside it. 2 completely separate things, welded together like they're obviously connected. Caring about the team, timing of a comment. There's no real logical link between them, but the question is built so that any answer you give sounds like an admission of guilt. Say nothing and you look like you're hiding something. Explain yourself and you sound defensive. Get angry and you just proved their point for them. This is what a red question actually is. Not a rude question, not an awkward one. A weapon disguised as a sentence. And you can spot one by a single tell. It doesn't actually want information. It wants a reaction. If you give a calm, factual, complete answer, would the person asking even care? If the honest answer is no, they just find another angle. You're not in a conversation anymore. You're in an ambush. And here's the trap inside the trap. Every instinct you have in that moment is wrong. You want to defend yourself immediately. You want to explain, correct them, prove you're not what they're implying. Don't. The instant you start explaining, you've accepted their frame. You're now the person on trial, answering to their accusation on their terms. You lost the second you opened with an excuse. There are 3 phrases that guarantee you lose that fast. And once you hear them, you'll notice people use them constantly, usually with the best intentions. The first is, "I already told you." It sounds like a fact. It lands like an insult. The other person doesn't hear, "This was already covered." They hear, "You're too slow to have caught it the first time." Now they're not just annoyed by the original question, they're annoyed at you personally. You've turned a disagreement into a grudge. The second is, "You misunderstood me." This one feels like clarification, but it's actually a small act of blame. You're telling the other person the confusion is their fault, not yours. And it puts you in a defensive crouch immediately, explaining and re-explaining, while they get to sit back and poke holes in version 2, then version 3. The third is the one we already broke down last time. Yes, but against an honest, oblivious question, it's just clumsy. Against a deliberately hostile one, it's fatal, because but is an open invitation for them to argue with whatever comes after it. You've handed them a new thread to pull. So, what do you actually do when you realize you're being baited? Nothing. For 1 full second. That's the entire first move, and it's the hardest one, because everything in you wants to fire back immediately. Negotiation expert William Ury, who spent years helping resolve some of the most hostile disputes on the planet through the Harvard Negotiation Project, describes this exact move in his book, Getting Past No. He calls it going to the balcony. Mentally stepping outside the argument for a second, like you're watching it from above instead of standing in the middle of it. Not to disappear, just to stop reacting on autopilot and actually choose your next move, instead of letting your adrenaline choose it for you. 1 breath. That's the whole technique. It costs you nothing, and it's the difference between responding and reacting. From the balcony, you get to pick your actual response. And the sharpest one isn't a comeback. It's a question. Can I make sure I understand what you're actually asking? Or, that's a lot in one question. Let me take the first part first. Something that hands the structure of the conversation back to you. It sounds almost too simple to work, but think about what it does. The person baiting you built a trap with a specific shape, expecting you to walk into it exactly as designed. The moment you ask them to clarify, or you choose which piece to answer first, you've stepped outside their blueprint. You're no longer the one on trial. You're the one running the room. And there's a reason this works on more than just the person asking the question. It works on everyone watching, too. Researchers Susan Fisk, Amy Cuddy, and Peter Glick, in their work on what's called the stereotype content model, found that we judge people almost instantly along 2 axes: how warm they are and how competent they are. A hostile question is usually engineered to attack both at once. Either you crack and look weak, or you snap back and look cold. But someone who stays level, asks a clarifying question, and answers on their own terms hits neither trap. They read as calm and sharp at the same time. To a room full of people watching, that combination is almost impossible to argue with, because there's no crack in it for anyone to grab. So here's the full shape of it, all the way through, the thing we promised you at the very start. First, filter who's asking. A stranger's opinion doesn't get to live rent-free in your head. Let it go before you even engage. Second, filter the question itself. If it's genuinely curious, just answer it. If it's clumsy but well-meaning, meet it with yes and instead of yes but, and you'll disarm it every time. And if it's a weapon dressed as a sentence, don't defend, don't explain, don't take the bait. Breathe for 1 second, step to the balcony, and hand the shape of the conversation back to yourself with a clarifying question. That's it. That's the whole system. It's not a script you memorize word for word. It's a sequence you run in your head every single time, no matter who's in front of you or what they just asked. The next time someone puts their fork down and looks right at you, you won't freeze. You'll run the filter, pick your lane, and answer on your terms. Calm and completely unshaken. If there's a question that still gets under your skin, one you've never quite had the right answer for, put it in the comments. Chances are 100 other people have heard the exact same one and never knew what to say either.